the computer. There we go. So, welcome aboard. This is GrowthOD for May 19th, 2026. Half of us are in a workshop in LA telling the story. We got a quorum here. Always great to see our friends. So, we've done our check ins, and now the focus for today. I asked you if you had a chance to read this to come to our session with a true story about how role playing has shown up in your life. Well, what was the story about when you decided intentionally to adopt a role for a particular purpose? How did it feel to be intentional, showing a particular face to the world? What does that mean with the power word authenticity? Is it possible to be an authentic person in the world, in the moment, at the same time intentionally choosing a particular face or a role or a way to be? Can I do both of those things at the same time? Can I be my authentic self when I'm also trying to play a particular role for some purpose? Is it the fact that I'm intentional making it authentic, or are those two things not compatible? I'm I'm struggling with that trade-off. And then I'd like you to connect this to last week's session when we were examining in detail our work in progress. We all talked about the thing that we were doing to make changes in the world. Our work in progress, we said, was the change we want to see in the world. Hat tip to Nelson Mandela. Well, in order to achieve that transformation, I adopt a role or multiple roles. How do I retain my authentic self and still have a purposeful face to show to the world? Because I'm trying to achieve an effect. Am I showing them my true self when I'm adopting a role? So those are the things I'd like you to think about um, as that true story about role playing is bubbling away in the background. So let me tell my story on that. Uh, I sent around an essay about a friend of mine, Bill Scheit, is a African drummer. He's about 45 years old, wonderful family. His son Finn and my father had a spiritual connection when he would come to my workshops and bring his family. My dad would play with his son, and it was like they were part of the same tree. It was just joyful, and we still we still have that connection. He's my drumming teacher. He's a certified African drummer under the sensei Mamadi Keita, who's a legendary drummer, rest in peace. I'm a primitive drummer like a monkey with a stick, but Bill graciously teaches me about drumming and just to be myself. And he gives me drumming, I give him analysis. And so at one of the workshops, uh, I said to him, I think you need to become the CEO of your own financial analysis firm. I was speaking metaphorically. I wanted him to adopt a position of total responsibility for doing his own thinking about his investments for his family. And the best way that I could think to have him do that was to become a CEO of his own advisory firm in his mind so that he would do his own research and validation and verification and develop systems and implement them and learn. He took me literally and he became the CEO of his own financial advisory firm. He now has a nice little business 15 years later, and we're partners in business where I send him clients that are doing long term investing, and he handles that part of it for me. And he's making a nice living doing that now. And he wrote a nice essay about that this week, and he said, "Hey, the power of that one sentence and the adopting of a role of a CEO completely changed his life by pulling different parts of his existence together." He was able to think about how his drumming company needed a CEO, and so thinking like a CEO helped him with his drumming, with his business, with his family, with his investments, and it was really powerful and a touching essay. Well, as I was reading that essay, in my usual monkey style, I made a sketch of how I felt when he was um, uh, writing. And in the middle, you see a CEO as a little in a bowl. To the left of it, the west, is the pathways that you take, all the experiences and the education and reflections of your life. All those stories come together to shape what it means to be a CEO. What I think as a CEO is probably going to be different than what you think as a CEO. What really matters is what we do with that information. To the east of that CEO, you see the overlapping circle, which is energy and lines of effort, and it is a circle with boundaries that are formed by the choices we make about what to do and what not to do. And inside that, I'm representing that I have multiple lines of effort in my business, in my teaching, in my soccer, in my work for the Army. I establish an area of operations in which I'm going to work, and I'm trying to do things in each of those little bubbles. Each one of those things is like a true story circle where I'm doing things or working on projects, but all of them are connected to that CEO in a foundational way. So the CEO for me is the face of the brand. There's an inside game of all the things that I do for all my lines of effort to get things done. But the CEO organizes that and then represents that to the world, and the world can see the CEO before they see what I'm doing underneath. So the CEO is my representative of my brand, of my systems. And that CEO can recruit allies, as I show there. And so in the very middle of that is the mindful moment where you are right now in time with the allies and the friends and the resources you're pulling together, moving forward to the east towards that work in progress. Well, that's hard to read. So I took that image and just dropped it into my AI assistant and said, hey, why don't you clean that up for me so that a human could read it? And it made a pretty nice little chart that showed how that CEO is that focal point of before, during, and after, and how those little locks you see, the LOC, those are like lines of concentration or points of leverage that can be used to support the line of effort. And those are the tools that we bring together. So the AI helped me clean up my ideas on that a lot. One of the powerful things I do when I'm thinking like a CEO is how to design the next steps, the next reality, the next line of effort. We call that design thinking. And it starts with empathizing who my clients are, who my customers are, who am I supporting, my allies, who do I work for, the people so that they may thrive. And that helps me to sharpen my definitions, to understand their roles, the different forces, so I can generate ideas, build rapid prototypes to try things out, test them and get feedback, and then consistently thinking about, am I really working on the right thing while I'm doing all that work up on the top? Am I working on the right problem? If so, how can I make systems that have an impact? And so, in that whole design thinking process as a CEO, as a catalyst change agent, I am mindful to be people centered, collaborative, curious, experimental, empathetic, and impact driven. That's what I mean by being a CEO. When I think about that in terms of bringing it to a financial analyst approach, in the upper left hand, you see I have my foundational principles: system, self, and market. I understand how psychology and the systems that I design are interfacing with a very volatile market, and I'm trying to enlarge the sweet spot in the middle. So all of those things are aligned according to my brand, which features plan, prepare, execute, and assess. When I do those things, then I'm ready to work in the world. I just want to show that over on the right-hand side, underneath management, you see that there's a team, stakeholders, CEO, chief of staff, and every one of those is a role that I play in my own business as I think about all my lines of effort. Every one of those is a personality that somehow is shaping what it is that I do. And the rest of this diagram is simply the operating system that I employ across all my businesses. Now, my friend Bill Scheidt did something like that in order to turn his own personal investing, where he was listening to me or following some guru, and he adopted a CEO mindset in order to bring the responsibility and the authority and the autonomy and the decision making into his own area of operations and became responsible for all of his results. So that little shift in mindset, adopting the role of a CEO, completely changed his life. And it traces all the way back to 15 years ago, some little offhand comment I made at one of the breaks stuck with him, and it evolved and blossomed into the man that he is today, taking care of his family with the business, thinking like a CEO, and ready to go out into the future. So that's my true story about um, role playing. How does role playing show up in my life? I try to be very intentional about what role I am presenting to the world. And I try to keep it to one of five things: husband, father, teacher, student, and warrior for the people. Those five focus lenses represent the top level roles that I don't even choose to play them. They have chosen me, it feels like. When I'm doing those things, I am my authentic self. And so in this mode right here, where I feel like I'm teaching, I'm actually being a student, trying to share with you lessons that I've learned from the teacher of life. So it turns out that teacher and student are part of me all the time, no matter what, whether I'm being a husband, a father, or a warrior. The teacher student roles are in there, and I consider that to be authentically me and how it shows up in the world. And that's everything that I want to say about that true story. I'd like to just hold that space for 10 seconds and say aho, so that whoever feels the spirit moving them to talk about role playing and what any of this stuff has triggered in you to tell a true story for a couple. But you don't have to have slides and be elaborate. But I just would like to hear what you think about when you think about role playing and authenticity and your work in progress and in your life. So if you will hold that for 10 seconds, I'm going to get us back into away from my big dumb screen and back so I can see your smiling faces. So let's hold that space for 10 seconds. I'm getting ready to hold up the talking stick. Now, ordinarily, when we go into the small breakout rooms, we do not record those pieces. I'm prepared to turn off the video now if that's okay with you, or if you think it would be better for us to record. My spider sense is that to be true to our principles, we would turn off the recording so that it's just us in this space. So, with your permission, I'm gonna turn off that recording. I'll turn this thing back on later when we announce our intention for the week ahead. But I think it's important that we retain the sacred nature of this space. So let me hit pause on the recording.